Hi, welcome to First Sense Friday, and hopefully my microphone has decided to work on this First Sense Friday. It's been a little temperamental, shall we say. Maybe wants to get to the weekend as well. I don't know why, because as a business owner, we both work the weekend, whether there's clients listed or not. So I wanted to thank Jill, who sent in a question for this week's topic of what happens when we die. And I'm going to have to go off of what I trust to be true and what's been my experience because I'm still here. So being able to definitively answer that, I don't think anyone of us can until we actually go through that process of dying, passing, croaking, kicking the bucket, checked out, punched your ticket. So many different reference points for it and different ways of addressing it. And Jill had asked what happens when we die as part of when I tossed out the question last week of if you have anything or the request last week, if you have anything that you'd like me to cover. And so for this portion of it, I'm going to go from where I am today and my experiences that I've had, both working as a medium and having the amazing experience of being present when someone is passing. So, welcome to my home. So you'll notice there's a little different view this week, and that's because I totally turned my bookcase into an office. So using as much space as possible in 750 square feet. So this is the view in the home setting. So welcome. So I don't really know yet what happens when we cross because I'm still here. And once I do know that, I'll be sure to come back and find you and fill you in and let you know if I was wrong about something. What I have been told from those who have crossed and being, like I said, so fortunate to be there when someone passes is that there really is a tunnel. Now, before any of you who might be a little claustrophobic get too concerned about this, it's not like you're walking through this little tiny tunnel. It's, if you can imagine a street being filled up with bright white light, and that's the image, that's the perspective that I've been shown when I've been present with someone who's crossing, as well as when your loved ones who have come through to me to send a message through to you. I have not ever been present, terrible English, at someone's crossing when there haven't been a room full of energy. Now, this is the same as when we're born, right? When we come into the physical sense, right before the umbilical cord is cut, there is a joining up. And as soon as that umbilical cord is cut, and typically we take our first breath, that's when the complete connection of the soul and the physical being join forces. Well, it's very similar if you can think of it in the reverse. So when you're going back into the non-physical, typically someone leaves their physical self before the last breath is taken. So we often think of the end being the last physical breath that happens for ourselves or anyone that we're fortunate enough to be with. But it's actually the severing of what's called the tether or the tie that keeps your soul and your physical self connected, sometimes called the golden strand or thread or something like that. It's our bungee cord. It keeps our soul and our human self connected. So prior to your passing, before your last breath, you'll actually be out of there. You won't be experiencing that last breath. And some people are really, really good travelers, and they'll leave before that. And that's a good thing, because who needs to stick around to see what the physical body does? So for those of you who may have had loved ones or friends or anyone in that, for that matter, who have passed in what we consider to be a traumatic way, a very quick passing. When they come through to me, they not doing as much of it lately, but if somebody's loved one comes through when you're sitting with me, I'm going to give the message. But when they come through and they show me a very quick chop, it means that I passed immediately. I have no awareness. I was in non-physical, I was in physical, and then I became non-physical. So that's car accidents, shooting, sometimes even a drowning. If someone was, say they had passed out because they drank too much and then they passed as that result, they'll come through and say it was a very quick passing, because it wasn't ongoing. It wasn't because of disease process. Or like I had someone come through the other day when I was working with someone, and he had a disease process known, but he actually passed from something very different. That will still be considered a very quick passing. So before I divert into all that kind of stuff, the process that seems to be pretty similar, whether it's when I'm there and I'm watching it, or whether it's someone who's come through and describes it, is that releasing of the physical body, and then this joyous feeling. I don't have enough words to describe it. I've been fortunate enough to have a smidgen of it, but I think our physical body often limits what we can grasp and what we can absorb, because it still has to go through a dense processing system. And not in non-physical, you're pure positive energy, so you don't have all this stuff that gets in the way, and this thing that's in there that has some doubts. So, but that joyous feeling has been conveyed to me, no matter what the crossing process was, to someone who actually crossed. So from there is that meet and greet, you could call it. So those who have crossed before you, they're usually in the room before you even leave, or the car or the plane or whatever it is. They're usually there. We're just not always paying attention and privy to it. So that meet and greet after you leave your physical body becomes this just this group of people. If you remember the old Verizon commercials where the guy with the glasses used to stand there in front and he'd say, "Can you hear me now?" And there'd be that whole crew behind him. And that's what it looks like to me. That's what it feels like, even if I can't see everybody who's present. So all of us experience this. All of us get this. The people, not really people anymore, the souls who greet you, they look like people. I jumped out of my skin this morning when I was pulling out of the driveway, because there was an energy that ran across the driveway. And Howard used to joke that he was going to get me a bumper sticker that says, "I break for dead people," because I really do. And if you're riding with me, you'll get the arm across the chest. But so everybody gets that meet and greet, and it's not always who you think it's going to be. Of course, you know, your loved ones, your parents, or people who are important to you will be in the crew. But I've seen like pets come up and get people. And I've seen if somebody has, say they had miscarried or had a terminated pregnancy, I've seen that soul greet the person who's crossing in order to do that into the non-physical. Probably my most profound, I'm going to say most profound, because it was a little hard to have a profound experience when it's your husband who's passing. Did have a funny moment there, but I'll cover that later. So my most profound one was a friend of mine, Anne, And it was actually the first experience I had. Howard and I were out to dinner, and I said to him, I got to go. I feel like Anne needs help. And she was in the end stage of her process. And although I hadn't been over there much, we were we were in contact. And so when I got there, it was still going to be a little bit, so I was trying to support family and friends and everything. And then at one point, one of my good friends who was there said, aren't you going to go in and see her? And there was this intuitive knowing within me, which seems a little redundant, but it was there, that once I went in, like, it was, Anne wasn't going to be here that much longer, so I was almost putting it off. Not that I was keeping her here. We don't have that capability. So for those of you who have experienced someone passing shortly before you got there, that whole they were waiting for you, it's a lot of pressure that I feel like is a missed message, because when we go, is already figured out. Like, we need to relax about this, with the exception of suicide. That's the only loophole. So as Anne's going through this, I knew, like, if I went in there, so I went in, hey, I just realized I was wearing butterflies. She was a big butterfly girl. So you didn't do that on purpose. That's really cool. So as I went in there and I was talking to her, and the way that we can all communicate telepathically. So I was asking her, I called her Annie Banani, and I said, Annie Banani, what do you need? And she was just having a hard time letting go. And you may see this in some people who maybe they're afraid of the crossing process. Most people are more afraid of the crossing process than the actual non-physical, because that part of it is ingrained in us that it really is a good gig. So I asked her, I said, Annie, what do you need? And she was afraid to cross. And she was, okay, she drove me absolutely bonkers at work, but her heart was amazing. Just because she didn't want to do her paperwork and I was in charge of getting that paperwork. And anyone who worked with her will completely agree with me on this. So when she was afraid to leave, she was afraid that she hadn't done enough on this planet, that she hadn't communicated, she hadn't helped, and all of that, which is so far from the truth. So far from the truth. And so I promised her angel wings. She liked angels. So I said to her, honey, what do you need? I'll make sure you get it. I can't back that up. But if somebody is in that turmoil place, I felt like it was a lot. Like when I would deal with my dad and with his Alzheimer's, I would pretty much agree to anything, because if you have resistance, somebody's going to fight that, hence the word resistance, and they're going to stick around. So I knew she was ready to go. There was just a fear part of her holding her here. So I promised her angel wings, being completely the Anne she was. She didn't want angel wings. She wanted butterfly wings. So I promised her butterfly wings. And then I pointed out, I said, I don't know who else you're waiting for. The room is packed. I felt true Jesus's energy. There's someone locally saying that they're connecting. Careful there. I felt his energy, and I felt Archangel Michael. And I said to her, I don't know who you're waiting for, girlfriend, because you have a good crew. Let's take a couple breaths and go. And she did. And I freaked out a little bit because she energetically still had my hand. And she was going through the crossing process, and I wasn't ready to go yet. So I had to say to her, you need to let go of my energy, because we can only go so far. You can have visits with your loved ones. That's what those dreams are about. The ones where they feel so powerful, where you can still describe them months, years, down the line with great detail. You were really there. You were really meeting up with those who have crossed. So as she's going, she's trying to take me with her, and that wasn't going to happen. So I leave the room, and not 10 seconds later, the hospice nurse is making the announcement that she has left. I didn't do that. She did. I've had the blessing to be part of that a few more times since then. Howard was kind of on autopilot because we talked about this all the time. So he knew how to steer the boat and how to get out of there. So that's why I said it was profound for being part of it. But I thankfully, other than hitting the morphine button, didn't really have to do much. So we all have a choice of how we go out. I have said to many people, you can go out with a clicker in your hand. If you trust that the process is one of continuation, it is one where you'll still get to see all your loved ones. Will they see you? Don't know. Depends on how open they are to it. So I think the more we have these communications and the more we discuss the process, that I don't know anyone who's getting out of this without going through it, and you've already done it several hundred times. So we just need to lighten up a little bit about this whole process. So everyone's experience is going to be a little different because it's going to be about what are your belief systems. And I plan on flying out of here, and I'll still visit, but oh man, I'm going. So there's there are things you can do between it was your phone acting up, Josh. I would be willing to bet it's actually an older male in your life that feels like a father or grandfather energy who's messing with you, because one of the pauses, Josh wrote that if I wrote ha ha ha, it was my phone acting up. I'm just sitting here watching. After you cross, this is one of those fun things. After you cross, you can mess with technology. And the more digital we become, the easier it is, because in the digital frequencies, when we go higher and higher and higher, we're getting closer to where we are when we're non-physical. So I felt the male energy coming around you, Josh, but I didn't know where to put it, and it was too distracting, so I just let it go, and I thought, well, I must have said something funny. I am very funny, so maybe I said something funny. So anyway, to get to Jill's question of what happens when we die, start doing your process. Like, look at it from a perspective of kind of take the big deal out of it for now. I'm going to follow up with that. But everybody does it. You've already done it. How can I make this the most playful experience of my lifetime? Think of it as like the croaking slip and slide, I guess. How can you slide out of your physical body into the non-physical again, and harness that energy that those who have crossed seem to have? Because there isn't anyone who's come through to me who didn't bring a joy energy. Now, they may be talking about something that was difficult. They may have to communicate a little bit of accountability, responsibility, that kind of thing. But everyone who has come through has been very grateful for having gone through the process. So now there's a little snippet of challenge that could be people who are really afraid. Like, I'm talking massively fearful. Usually your soul will take over and you'll do the process because it knows how to do it, kind of like autopilot. But there are a small amount of those souls that are so afraid that they leave their physical body. They finish that process. My third eye is buzzing off the charts right now. But they leave their physical process, and they no longer have a physical body, but they pulled the brake and they end up in what's called earthbound, or some people refer to it as being stuck. And it's not great. It's like Groundhog Day. You do the same thing over and over again. So a lot of the times those are traumatic deaths, though, where someone had the awareness and just locked it up. And it doesn't mean that they're stuck there forever, just until someone can see them, realize they're stuck, and help them cross. So it's not some place to play in the earthbound and all that. There have been some people that gravitate towards that, and I just don't recommend it. So how can another Vicky is asking, how can I connect with a loved one? We connect through our heart, or our heart centers. Remember last week I talked about the energy being out here, and that's where the love and the you can feel the vibration of spirit is. So you actually connect through your heart space. So what I suggest is that if someone wants to connect with a loved one or someone who's crossed, is number one, you always ask, I always ask Archangel Michael, please surround me with white light. Thank you very much. He's got a great sense of humor, so, you know, mix up how you say thank you. Keeps it interesting for him too. And then I would say, I would want you to do an intention, Vicki. I would want you to say, I would like to connect to my mother. Her name is yada, yada. Okay? Because there are, remember those earthbound spirits I talked about? They can be a pain right in the Chushi Bumi. So they can often take on energies and fool other people into thinking they're connecting with ascended masters, or think they're connecting with their family members and everything. So you need to be really sure that you're in your highest space. I would not do it if you were in a moment of real grief. I wouldn't do it out of any kind of lack. I would do it out of playfulness. And the other thing you can do is set the intention before you go to sleep and say, I would like to meet up with my loved one in my dreams. This is not 1-800-DIAL-THE-DEAD, all right? It just isn't. They're busy. Their job is not just to watch over us. It's not. And it's such a fallacy. When we cross, we are still working on our own soul's journey. So while, okay, there's no time frame thing there, so it's not as crunched as we feel here, but they're still busy, they're still learning, they're still growing, they're still expanding. And please do not ask advice of someone who's crossed, because they're still in that process of what they want to learn as a soul. They're not connected to the human element of what we're going through. And if somebody was bad with their money here, why the heck would you ask them for advice on the other side? They do not know the lottery numbers. Stop it. So, but if you want to connect from that heart space. Think of, you know, what are the sweetest memories you have of that person? What did it feel like to be in their presence? And see if you can feel it drop into your heart. Some of us are wired to hear it in our head. I feel and I see and I hear in my head, but my own loved ones come through my heart space. So everybody can do this. You don't need a person specially wired to connect with those who have crossed, because we all still have that non-physical element to us. Kids are really good at it because until they've been told it's not possible to connect, they are just natural, what are those things called? Antennas, and natural antennas, satellite dishes. So should you feel like you connect with someone who has crossed, please respect their energy. It takes a lot of effort for them to slow down their physical vibration in order to meet ours. So it's a lot. And I think that those who are tapping in all the time to connect with their loved ones, you're being rude. So if you have grief and you need help, that's what a therapist is for. That's what friends are for. That's what a coach is for, to help you move, or a grief counselor, help you move through that. I take a little different approach, because I think we have to have respect for those who have crossed. And I think we need to celebrate them. When Howard was crossing, we did have fun. It was incredibly hard. It still is some days. Debilitating sometimes for moments, not days, not weeks, not months, not years, moments. Because you're not honoring them. if you're sitting in your shit, and that's not love. So if you profess to love those who have crossed, you will honor the fact that they completed their contract. So when he was crossing and he was in the hospital bed in the living room, I would say to him, high five me. And he's like, I'm trying to die here. Like, can you leave me alone? Those of who knew him knew he was a smart aleck. But I say to him, in all reverence and love and seriousness, I need you to feel good about the fact that you're crossing, because in our society, we do not celebrate this enough. And I want that message out there that we have to stop being so self-centered and focusing on what is it about us that is so important that everybody has to work their soul process around us. No. Yeah, it stinks. Stinks big times. All those times it's stunk. So I can't tell you what your crossing process is going to be like. I can promise you that there's a tunnel. I can promise you that people will meet you. I can promise you that it's a massive, massive, massive outpouring of love that you have never felt before. But your process in the actual transition is going to be up to you. So work on any fears, any beliefs you have that this is a terrible thing or a horrible thing or anything like that. It's not. It's a good gig. And besides, you'll be coming back again anyway. So, and anybody who tells you they're on their last life is not. Because if you were on your last life, you wouldn't be in your braggadocious self now, would you? You would be off communing with nature or something. So if we could take one message from those who have crossed, is that it really is a lot of fun. Do they miss us? I do believe they do. That's a lot of do's. I believe that there is a connection that has them missing the fact that we're not paying attention to the fact that they are there. So it's not like they have a deficit or they're feeling a loss because they're non-physical and they don't have their ego, so they don't experience that, and we won't experience that. What they feel is, geez, I wish these people that I love so much would recognize the fact that I'm standing right here. Now, that could be that you have a kind memory about them and maybe you tear up. That's love too. But sitting in your stuff is not. So thank you for tapping in. Thank you, Jill. I hope you get to watch this afterwards, and I hope it answered your question. And remember to be in that space of appreciation for them being in your life and for the fact that you're here. How about we start having as much fun as those who have crossed seem to be having? It is possible. We don't have to wait till we croak. So thank you so much. Hope you have a good weekend. Send any other subjects along. I loved being able to go off on a question and to bring, whatever knowledge I have. So thank you and have a good weekend.